Someone is reported missing in the UK every 90 seconds. Thankfully, most of these people are returned home safely, but some people fall through the cracks and remain missing to this day. The UK charity Missing People found that the most common reason for adults to go missing are diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health issues, relationship breakdown, dementia, financial problems, and escaping violence. There are, however, some cases where none of these factors apply, and people disappear because something terrible has happened to them. Claudia Lawrence. In March of 2022, Claudia Lawrence will have been missing for 13 years, and is one of the UK's most famous unsolved cases. Claudia was just 35 years old when she mysteriously disappeared from her home in York, England, and her case has been one of the most publicized in British history. Despite a multi-million-dollar investigation and inquiry, the North Yorkshire police are still no closer to cracking her case. If you have any information about Claudia's disappearance, you're urged to contact 101 if you're in the UK, or 44-1904-618-691 if you're international. Let's start at the beginning. Claudia Elizabeth Lawrence was born to her parents, Peter and Joanne, on February 27, 1974, and was the couple's second daughter. The Lawrences lived in Malton, North Yorkshire, and Claudia's parents described her childhood as comfortable and stable. Claudia and her sister Allie would spend most of their weekends riding horses, with Claudia being especially close to her horses. After graduating from a private school, Claudia discovered her love for cooking and began studying to be a chef at her local college. When Claudia found something that she loved, she stuck to it, and by her early 20s, she'd passed all of her qualifications and had gotten herself a job at the University of York's Goodricke College campus. With her new job beginning in the York city centre, Claudia decided that it was time to move out from her family home and put down roots in York. In 2007, Claudia purchased her first home, a quaint terraced house just outside of York. The area was perfect for a single woman like Claudia. It was a 10-minute drive from her work instead of a 45-minute drive from Malton, and the area was peaceful. Close to Claudia's home was the Nag's Head, her favorite pub and the place you'd be most likely to find her on a Friday or Saturday night. Claudia's friends testified that she was friendly and bubbly, and they loved nothing more than talking about their week over a few drinks. Jen King told the BBC, quote, "When we weren't together, we were constantly texting or chatting on the phone. We'd listen to each other talk about our days, or if we were having a stressful time at work." It appears that Claudia was interested in more than just having a few drinks at Nag's Head, and there were rumors that Claudia was meeting with a married man at the pub and had been engaging in multiple affairs. This point becomes important later on. March 18th, 2009 was like any other day. Claudia left for work as usual and turned up for her 6 a.m. shift. She was captured on CCTV outside of Goodricke College. An important thing to note about the 18th and 19th is that Claudia was walking to work instead of driving. She explained to her friends and her family that her car was in for repairs, so she would have to make the journey on foot. This concerned her friends and family, as Claudia's shift started at 6 a.m., and the walk to work took at least 45 minutes, meaning she would need to leave the house at around 5 a.m. While her home and surrounding areas leading to York City Centre are safe, the prospect of Claudia walking alone in the dark still scared them. At 3 p.m. on March 18th, 2009, Claudia was spotted on CCTV cameras in Melrose Gate walking towards her home. We know that Claudia arrived home safely as she was seen by her neighbor. That evening, Claudia called her father, Peter, and then her mother, Joanne, at around 8 p.m. Joanne told the BBC that the two spoke about plans for the upcoming Mother's Day. She also said, quote, "We'd both been watching Location, Location, Location on television. It was being filmed in Harrogate, and we have a friend there, so we just chatted about that. She seemed absolutely fine." Joanne and Claudia finished up their call and exchanged their I love yous and see you later for what would be the last time. Joanne Lawrence had no idea that this would be the final time she ever spoke to her daughter, and that the next 13 years of her life would be a living nightmare. According to phone records, Claudia's final outgoing text was sent at 8:23 p.m., and the contents and destination have never been revealed. Phone records also indicated that Claudia received a text at 9:12 p.m. from a number in Cyprus. It was a well-known fact that Claudia liked to vacation in Cyprus, and had made good friends with the bartenders and staff who worked there. Claudia would frequently chat with them via text and would return to Cyprus to visit them during her holidays. March 19, 2009, Claudia failed to show up for her 6 a.m. shift at the Goodrick College. Her colleagues noted that this was out of character, and her manager called her to see if everything was okay. Her manager was met with a voicemail, and it's unknown if the manager left a message or not. It appears that no further action was taken, and Claudia was recorded as being absent. Then the evening of March 19, 2009 rolled around, and Claudia's friend, Susie Cooper, became concerned when Claudia failed to show up for drinks at the Nag's Head pub. The day before, the pair had agreed to meet up for a drink, but Claudia never arrived at the meetup. Susie told the BBC that on the evening of March 19, 2009, she had called and texted Claudia, jokingly, sending her a text about being stood up, but got no answer from her. As the hours passed, Susie still hadn't heard from Claudia. She knew something was very wrong. Not knowing where else to turn, she called Peter, Claudia's father, and let him know the news. Peter too knew that this was out of character for his daughter, and immediately jumped into his car and drove to her house. Upon entering the house, Peter was met with a bizarre sight. Claudia's home was almost immaculate. There were no signs of a struggle, and more disturbingly, there was no sign of Claudia. The pots had been washed, her toothbrush was out in the sink, and her slippers were tucked away neatly close to her front door. The absence of anything made Peter and Susie incredibly uncomfortable, and it was at this point that they knew something was wrong. Peter also noticed that Claudia's backpack containing her Samsung D900 phone and chef's whites were missing, indicating that she had left for work that morning as usual. With a sinking feeling in his stomach, Peter grabbed his phone, dialed 999, and asked to speak to the police. Claudia's home was abuzz with police activity, and within hours the British press had descended upon the house, hoping to get a comment from Claudia's parents. In the coming hours, Claudia's case was disturbingly upgraded from a missing person case to a homicide investigation, although the North Yorkshire police refused to divulge what evidence they had to support this. On March 20th, 2009, Detective Chief Inspector Lucy Pope addressed the media, telling them that she believed that Claudia had been abducted. As Claudia's case was upgraded, Detective Superintendent Ray Galloway took charge of the investigation, signaling to the public that this was much more than a missing person case. The city of York was plastered with missing person flyers, and residents felt on edge, wondering if they could be next. Claudia's disappearance rocked not only York, but Yorkshire and the rest of the UK. Thousands of well wishes and messages of support came into Claudia's family, and people across the country extended a helping hand however they could. This media attention brought tips and leads that the North Yorkshire police found very promising in their initial investigation. Witnesses began coming forward, saying that on the morning of March 19, 2009, they had seen a woman matching Claudia's description talking to a man who was described as a left-hand smoker. This sighting was made at around 5:35 in Melrose Gate, a mere 10-minute walk from Claudia's house. What troubled investigators was that Claudia was not captured on CCTV after this bridge. Another witness came forward and said that they had seen a couple, a man and a woman fitting Claudia's description, arguing outside of York University at around 6 a.m. These sightings remain unconfirmed, but paint a troubling picture into what Claudia's last moments may have looked like. During public appeals for information, Detective Galloway began making bizarre claims and calling into question Claudia's personal and love life. He appeared on the TV show Crime Watch and said that Claudia's relationships were complex and mysterious, and brought to the surface the rumors that Claudia may have been having an affair with a married man. The British tabloids clung on to this and ran with it, publishing terrible stories about Claudia's personal life, much to the disgust of her family. Newspapers ran with headlines reading, quote, "Missing Chef Claudia. So how many married lovers did she have?" And "Missing Chef Claudia Lawrence got a kick out of married men and had 40 mysterious lovers," as well as "Police, secret lovers of missing Chef Claudia Lawrence are lying to us." Even other officers began criticizing Detective Galloway's approach to the case, with former Metropolitan Police Detective Clive Driscoll saying, quote, "The way Ray Galloway went about it was wrong. He should have phrased it differently. It painted a picture that Claudia somehow deserved what happened to her. It had a big impact on how people viewed her, and subsequently how the public responded to the investigation." Newspapers continued to pump out headlines about Claudia, but the North Yorkshire police were finding themselves at a dead end with their investigation. They theorized that Claudia may have run away to Cyprus, but this theory was quickly squashed when her bank accounts and passports were found in her home. The North Yorkshire police believed that Claudia was killed because of her mysterious and complex relationships, and are still appealing to anyone who attended the Nag's Head pub in 2009 to come forward. The North Yorkshire police are also asking for the public's assistance in identifying a man who was spotted on CCTV cameras near Claudia's home on the morning of her mysterious disappearance. The footage was originally aired in 2013 on Crime Watch, a British TV program dedicated to solving cold cases. In the footage, a mysterious man can be seen walking into frame before entering the alley behind Claudia's home at around 5:07. The man disappears from view before being spotted again, rejoining the main road. In 2013, the North Yorkshire Police created the Major Crimes Unit that would tackle cold cases like Claudia's. Her home was forensically examined, and the forensic investigators found fingerprints and male DNA that remain unidentified to this day. Numerous arrests have been made in connection with Claudia's case. However, the Crown Prosecution Service has rejected all of these on the grounds of insufficient evidence. The public and North Yorkshire Police never forgot about Claudia, and even in 2021, her case is heavily discussed. In September of 2021, the North Yorkshire Police announced that they were draining the Sandhutton gravel pits as part of their search for Claudia. As of writing this episode, there have been no further updates in Claudia's case, and her case continues to baffle experts. Sadly, in 2021, Peter Lawrence, Claudia's father, passed away without ever knowing what happened to his daughter. Peter was instrumental in keeping Claudia's case alive, and even campaigned for Claudia's law that allows a guardian to manage the affairs of a person who has been missing for 90 days or more. If you have any information, you're urged to contact the North Yorkshire Police on 101 or 441904 618 691. Alternatively, if you wish to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers UK at 0800 555 111. Susie Lemplu. The summer of 1986 was a time of prosperity and hope for 25-year-old Susie Lemplu of Cheltenham, England. The 1980s saw a housing market boom in the UK, and most especially London. So when Susie applied for jobs as an estate agent, she was over the moon to be accepted straight away by Sturgis & Sons. She even wrote in her diary, quote, "I'm hired on the spot. The company puts me in the window desk as the most attractive female. That's how it is, the most attractive female on display for any man to see." Unbeknownst to Susie, a madman was following her every move and waiting for the perfect time to strike. It would be on July 28, 1986 that everything would fall apart and the lives of the Lemplu family would be changed forever. July 28, 1986 started like any other for the 25-year-old estate agent. She got up, got ready, and drove herself to work in her white Ford Fiesta. Susie entered the office that morning with her usual cheery disposition and opened up her diary to see what the day ahead had in store for her. Susie's diary was filled with the usual viewings and meetings with prospective clients, but one stood out to her. Earlier that week, a man by the name of Mr. Kipper had called and asked to view 37 Shorrold's Road in Fulham, West London, at around dinner time. Susie obliged and penciled the mystery man into her diary, telling him that the pair would see each other soon. Little did Susie know that this man had ill intentions, and it would be the last appointment she ever attended. Susie's case remains one of the strangest unexplained mysteries to date in the UK. Dinner time rolled around, and Susie began getting herself ready for the viewing. She grabbed her house keys and car keys, $15 in cash, and credit cards, but decided to leave her handbag behind. She said goodbye to her colleagues at Sturgis & Sons and jumped in her car at around 12:40 p.m., headed for 37 Shorrold's Road in Fulham. Susie's colleagues believed that she would be back in the office after her viewing. But as the hours rolled around and there was no sign of her, they knew that something was very wrong. Diana Lemplu was shocked to receive a call from Susie's manager. She immediately asked if everything was okay, only to be met with a troubling question. On the other end of the phone, Susie's manager asked, quote, "Do you have any idea where your daughter might be, Mrs. Lemplu?" Diana's heart sank. She knew that Susie would never have skipped work, and the sinking feeling in her stomach was overwhelming. But she had no time to react. Susie's manager continued, quote, "We wondered whether she could have called into home for lunch. I don't want to worry you, Mrs. Lemplu, but Susanna left to show a house to a client just before lunch and she's not returned. We just wanted to check everywhere we could." Susie's manager rushed over to her diary, hoping that it would hold the answer to the mystery. Inside, she found the following entry: 12:45 Mr. Kipper, 37 Shorrold's, OS, with OS meaning outside the property. There were no other details about this Mr. Kipper, and Susie's colleagues were left with a bad taste in their mouth. By 6:45 p.m., Susie still hadn't returned to the office or made contact with her family, and it was at this time that Susie's manager dialed 999 and asked to speak to the police. Susie was officially reported missing at 6:45 p.m. that evening, and within minutes, police cars descended upon the Sturgis & Sons office located at 654 Fulham Road. All of Susie's colleagues were questioned, and upon finding out that she had gone to a viewing alone, the Metropolitan Police sent officers to the house to question witnesses and look for any sign of Susie. When questioning witnesses and residents, the police learned that around 1 p.m., Susie was seen with a man outside of the property. Witnesses recalled that the two were arguing and walking away from the property, which worried investigators. After this, there were no more sightings of Susie, and the trail went cold. That was until around 10 p.m., when a white Ford Focus with the number plate B396GAN was found abandoned on Stevenage Road, just a mile away from the Sturgis & Sons office where she worked. There was no sign of a struggle, the handbrake was off, and her purse was still neatly tucked inside the glove box. The only thing missing was her keys. An examination by forensic investigators showed no foreign fingerprints in the car, and it had been left unlocked. The media soon caught wind of Susie's disappearance, and news crews descended upon Sturgis & Sons as well as the Lemplu home. Susie's case was incredibly well publicized, with Crime Watch presenter Nick Ross telling The Guardian, quote, "It's the cliches of crime which fascinate. Susie Lemplu was attractive, female, young, and middle class. It would have been very different if she hadn't been good-looking, or had come from a tenement somewhere, from a disrupted, dysfunctional background. People tend to be more interested in the murders of people from privileged backgrounds than underprivileged ones." The investigation into Susie's disappearance pressed on, and each day a new story was published about the missing 25-year-old. Despite all of this media attention, there was little progress in her case, and the Metropolitan Police have been called into question over their investigation techniques and possible failings. In 1986, DNA was in its infancy and was not something that most forces considered during an investigation. The Metropolitan Police were also still using index cards and handwritten notes, which made it hard to cross-reference information. The interest in Susie's case persisted, and even in 2021, her case remains one of the most bizarre British cases that desperately needs to be solved. The Metropolitan Police continued with their investigation, following every lead to its end. At one point, they believed that the name Kipper was actually the Dutch version of Kipper, as their pronunciations are the same but they're spelled differently. However, they were unable to connect anyone with that name to Susie, and the estate agents had no records of anyone under this name. The police conducted DNA testing on 800 unidentified bodies following Susie's disappearance, just to make sure that she had not been discovered and left unidentified. Sadly, these tests yielded no results, and the Lemplu family were left without much-needed answers. Paul Lemplu, Susie's father, praised the Metropolitan Police for their efforts, telling the BBC, quote, "The police have kept me fully informed, and I look forward to further information with interest." In the aftermath of Susie's disturbing disappearance, her family created the Susie Lemplu Trust in her honor. According to the Trust's website, "Our mission is to reduce the risk of violence and aggression through campaigning, education, and support. Our vision is a society in which people are safer and feel safer from violence and aggression. We want people to be able to live life to the fullest." The Trust provides funding and education, and even helped to create the National Stalking Helpline in 2010, which has gone on to help over 45,000 people in the UK. As the years ticked away, the Lemplu family were left in the dark, and in 1993, they had Susie declared dead in absence. In the weeks after Susie went missing, her family feared for the worst, with Diana telling BBC London Plus, quote, "I can face up to the fact that she has died, but I cannot face up to what has happened between. That's too much." As the anniversary of Susie's disappearance came and went, her family hoped and prayed that someone would come forward with information. In 2001, the Metropolitan Police shocked the UK when they announced that they were formally interviewing convicted rapist and murderer John Cannon in connection with Susie's disappearance. According to inmates, Cannon's nickname inside prison was Kipper. Cannon was convicted of the murder of Shirley Banks in Bristol in 1987, and at the same time as Susie's disappearance, he was on a day release after being transferred to an open prison. Cannon committed a string of vile acts against women, and it wasn't until 1989 that he was arrested and sentenced for Shirley Banks. Then in 2002, the UK was shocked once more to hear that John Cannon had been arrested and was in the process of being charged with Susie's murder. According to a Sun News article, quote, "A criminology also revealed DNA evidence linking Susie to a Ford Sierra that Cannon once used with a false number plate, SLP 386S. In the same article, Mike Barley revealed how Cannon opened up to him about his involvement. He said, quote, He said that the car belonged to a Bristol businessman, and that he was the only one who was responsible for the murder of Susie Lemplu. I said to him, "Is that man you, John?" And he said, "Yes." Then he went, "No, I mean it's not me," and then backtracked. In 2002, the Crown Prosecution Service concluded that there was insufficient evidence against John Cannon to proceed with the criminal trial, and he was never brought before a court to determine whether he was involved in Susie's disappearance or not. This didn't stop the Metropolitan Police from naming him as their #1 suspect, and to this day, they strongly believe that Cannon is the man they're looking for. Disturbingly, Cannon managed to have his whole life tariff overturned in exchange for a life sentence with a minimum of 35 years, meaning he will be eligible for parole in 2022. Multiple areas of the UK have been excavated following tips and leads from Cannon and those closest to him. Throughout the 2000s and into the 2010s, the Metropolitan Police dug up areas where Cannon was known to live and operate. One of his ex-girlfriends had told police that Cannon had buried Susie's body at the Norton Barracks in Worcestershire. However, an excavation of the area yielded no results, and they were back to square one. Then an inmate who had served with Cannon claimed that he had confided in him that he'd buried Susie's body underneath a patio of his mother's home in Sutton Coldfield, some 126 miles away. A team of forensic experts equipped with ground-penetrating radar were sent to the scene, but again, nothing of interest was found. The police have been unable to determine whether this prisoner was trying to help the investigation or give tips to have his sentence reduced. In 2021, the Daily Mail ran an article with the headline, quote, "Did police ignore vital clue in Susie Lemplu murder case? Witness who saw prime suspect John Cannon hurl suitcase into canal days after she vanished went to the police 3 times, but information was never passed on." This article details the account of a witness only known as Dave, who claimed to have seen Cannon dumping a suitcase into the Grand Union Canal in Brentford, just days after Susie's mysterious disappearance. This canal is just 5.8 miles away from the home where Susie was last seen. Sadly, this eyewitness account was never taken seriously, and according to Dave's friend Anne, he was ignored. According to ex-superintendent Jim Dickey, quote, "Dave went to the Brentford police station 3 times. 3 times. There should be a report in the major incident room with the information that he gave, and it should have been followed up on. Someone screwed up. Had I known about this report when I took over the case in 2000, we could have investigated it further. It wasn't passed on to the original investigation team, and it certainly wasn't passed on to my team. All I'll say is if I was still the senior investigating officer, I would move heaven and earth to see if there's a body and luggage in that area." Serial killer Steve Wright, also known as the Suffolk Strangler, was also investigated in 2008 in connection to Susie's case. According to the Metropolitan Police, Steve and Susie knew each other after they'd both previously worked on the QE2 cruise ship in the early 80s. However, no link between the two was ever established, and Steve Wright is no longer considered a suspect. In recent years, land near Drake's Broughton in Worcestershire has been searched, but no sign of Susie has ever been found. It's been 35 years since Susie Lemplu mysteriously vanished, and sadly, her mother Diana passed away without ever finding out what happened to her daughter. Susie's brother, Richard, is now desperate for answers. He told the Sunday Mirror, quote, "It would be lovely to find her, to have somewhere where we could scatter her ashes." 25-year-old Susie Lemplu was last seen in the proximity of 37 Shorelds Road at around 1 p.m. on July 28, 1986. Since then, she has never been seen or heard from again, and her family are desperate for answers. If you have any information, you're urged to contact 101 if you're in the UK, or 4420-7230-1212 if you're calling internationally. Alternatively, if you wish to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers UK at 0800-555-111. Luke Durbin. On December 4th, 1986, 17-year-old Nikki Durbin welcomed her first child, Luke, into the world. At the age of 17, Nikki worked hard to provide Luke with a happy and stable upbringing, missing out on many of the fun experiences that others her age were having. Luke grew into a kind and polite young man, and those who knew him had nothing but good things to say about him. In one interview, Nikki recalled happier times with Luke, saying, quote, "I treasure one special memory of you. Last year, you were helping at a concert at your old school. You noticed one of the musicians, a lad of 11, was so nervous he couldn't tune his guitar. You rushed on stage to help him. You'd sensed his embarrassment and couldn't help it." After leaving Farlingay Secondary School, Luke enrolled in a music course at Colchester Institute in Colchester, Essex, which is around 36 miles from the home that he shared with his mother, and his little sister, Alicia, in Hollesley. Luke thoroughly enjoyed his time at college, but found the commute daunting. It required taking 2 buses and a train, and after a year he dropped out. Luke was disheartened by this and slowly began to lose his direction in life. That was until he got a job at a greengrocer in Aldeburgh, which gave him a new sense of purpose and direction. Finally, the 19-year-old was back on track and was enthusiastic about life and what the future had in store for him. Sadly, Luke would never get to see what lay ahead, and on May 12, 2006, the Durbin's life was turned upside down. Thursday, May 11, 2006, was an evening for relaxation and celebration in the Durbin household. Nikki had a friend over from Australia, and Luke's friend Alex had returned home from London for the weekend to catch up with family and friends. Luke, Alex, and another friend, Zach, had planned a night out in Ipswich that Friday night so that they could spend the rest of the weekend with their families. Luke later left his home on his brand new motorcycle with his wallet, keys, phone, and a change of clothes. He drove to his friend Alex's house and left his bike there along with his phone and keys. The idea was that Luke would stay the night at Alex's house and return the next morning once he was fully sobered up. According to Alex and Zach, the trio had a few drinks at a local pub before calling a taxi into Ipswich town center to kickstart their night out. The trio entered the Zest nightclub, and at some point in the evening, Alex left after becoming too drunk to carry on, leaving Luke and Zach to go on partying. At one point in the night, Zach and Luke became separated when Zach went to the bar to buy some drinks. When he returned where they had been standing, there was no sign of Luke. Zach simply brushed this off and assumed that Luke had gotten lucky and gone home with a girl. Unbeknownst to Zach, Luke was wandering around Ipswich town center, and his final moments were captured in eerie CCTV clips. It's known that Luke left Zest nightclub at around 2 a.m., and between 2:30 and 3, he was seen at the Ipswich train station by members of staff. The staff members working that night informed Luke that all of the trains had finished running for the night, and that there wouldn't be another service until the morning. He then was asked to leave, which he did without resistance. Those who spoke to Luke at the train station said that he was in good spirits and didn't appear to be drunk. Then at 3:45 a.m., Luke is captured on CCTV at the Hawk Express taxi rank located on Old Foundry Road in Ipswich. According to Google Maps, the taxi rank is a 21-minute walk from the train station, and it's unknown why Luke chose this specific taxi rank. The footage shows Luke inside of the office speaking to the receptionist and trying to organize a taxi home. However, he realizes that he doesn't have any money with him, as he had left his wallet at Alex's house. The receptionist informs Luke that he's more than welcome to use their phone to call his mother and ask for her card details, but Luke declined, telling the receptionist that he didn't want to wake his mother up at that hour, as she had to work early the next morning. After realizing that he wasn't going to be able to get a taxi home, Luke left the taxi rank and headed for the bus station. Luke Durbin is seen for the last time on CCTV at 4 a.m. walking across a zebra crossing on Doghead Street, walking towards the bus station. After this, Luke Durbin has never been seen again or heard from in 15 years. His disappearance continues to baffle investigators. Shortly after Luke is spotted on CCTV crossing the road, a silver or white Volvo 440 is seen driving past. This car would become the key focus of the investigation into Luke's mysterious disappearance, but we'll touch more on that later. Luke failed to make contact with friends or family for the entirety of Friday, May 12, 2006. And as morning broke on Saturday the 13th, Nikki sensed that something was wrong. The 13th rolled around, and as the morning turned into afternoon, Nikki became concerned that she hadn't heard from her son. At first, she assumed that he had gone into work. However, after speaking to Zach and Alex, she learned that they too hadn't seen or heard from Luke since the night before. Alex informed Nikki that his phone, wallet, and motorcycle and keys were all still at his house, and that Luke hadn't been there to collect them. Panicked, Nikki grabbed her phone and called the local hospital to make sure that Luke hadn't been involved in an accident, but the hospital informed her that no one matching Luke's description had been admitted. A sense of panic and dread deepened, and Nikki grabbed her phone once more and called the police. She told the Suffolk News, quote, "I phoned the police, and I remember part of me thought it was so dramatic and an overreaction. I can imagine that I was really apologetic on the phone because I thought I was wasting their time." Looking back, Nikki realizes she wasn't wasting police time, and that her nightmare had only just begun. The Suffolk police began investigating Luke's disappearance, and that's when they came across the CCTV footage of Luke at 4 a.m. crossing Doghead Street. Just after Luke crossed the road, a white or silver Volvo 440 drove down the road, and after checking the license plates, the police made a horrifying discovery. They found that the name and address registered were fake, leading them to believe that the car had been operating as an unlicensed taxi. The Suffolk police knew that they had a huge problem with gangs operating illegal taxis in Ipswich during the time of Luke's disappearance. According to officers, gangs would use fake registrations and drive around the city at night, looking for people who were drunk and vulnerable. Once the victim got into their taxi, the driver would pull over and threaten the passenger, robbing them and sometimes assaulting them. Is it possible that Luke was picked up by one of these illegal taxis, and an altercation occurred? Suffolk police also uncovered evidence that Luke was involved in the buying and taking of illegal substances, with his mother, Nikki, admitting that she had caught Luke smoking soon after he dropped out of his college course. The Suffolk police began to investigate his involvement in illegal substances further, and pondered whether Luke had himself gotten in too deep with the wrong crowd, or had outstanding debts that he was struggling to pay. All of these theories swirled around. However, without any solid evidence, the police were back to square one. The police, along with the residents of Ipswich, organized wide-scale searches for Luke, following the announcement of his disappearance. Police helicopters, sniffer dogs, and ground teams were deployed but ultimately found no sign of Luke. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Then the unconfirmed sightings began trickling in. A witness claimed to have seen Luke near the Vauxhall Stadium between 7:30 and 8:30 a.m. No CCTV was recovered, and police were unable to confirm or deny whether or not this was Luke. Another possible sighting was reported on May 13th, the day that Luke was reported missing. The witness claimed to have seen Luke in a dark blue car near the Durbin Center car park in Woodbridge. Again, this sighting was never confirmed, but does play into the theory that Luke owed the wrong people money and was taken against his will as a result. During their investigation, Suffolk police uncovered evidence to suggest that Luke had links to Brixton, and that the people and gang he may have owed money to were also connected to Brixton. In 2011, Luke's name was flagged after a couple in Brixton had used his name and date of birth in an application form for a loan and credit card. They had also used his details to buy things online in 2007, just a year after he was reported missing. The two people whose identities have been withheld were questioned and released without charges concerning his disappearance. 15 years on, and Luke Durbin's mysterious disappearance remains as one of Suffolk Police's most baffling cases. In 2010, Luke's case was handed over to the Major Investigations Team, following a review that found that the Suffolk Police had failed to act appropriately in the days after Luke was reported missing. Several people have been questioned, however, as of 2021, we're still no further to discovering the truth. Nikki told the Suffolk News in May of 2021, quote, "The best case scenario now would be that Luke decided to run away, and he's living a happy life somewhere else. As a parent, you want them to be happy, but I personally don't think this is what happened. I think the chances are so low. The worst case scenario is that he was tortured or something, but I just can't bear it. I can't bear to think about it. That's where my imagination has to stop." Luke Durbin was just 19 years old when he mysteriously vanished from Ipswich town center on the morning of May 12, 2006. He was last seen wearing a black and gray long-sleeve collared shirt, a purple and gray white stuff sweatshirt, faded denim jeans with a motif on the thigh, and brown suede moccasin-style shoes. If you have any information, you're urged to contact the Suffolk Police at 01473 613 513. Alternatively, if you wish to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers UK at 0800 555 111. Corey Mckeague. 23-year-old Corey Mckeague of Scotland was described by friends and family as a confident and outgoing young man who had no problem making friends and could charm anyone that he met. In 2013, Corey joined the RAF and was sent to RAF Huntington in Ipswich, Suffolk, following his basic training. Corey excelled in the RAF and quickly found himself in the role of senior aircraftman as a gunner and medic. He was well liked by all of those in his squadron and knew how to have fun and ease the tensions of being in the RAF. True to his outgoing nature, Corey loved to visit the bars in Bury St. Edmunds with his squad mates, and the evening of September 23, 2016 was no exception. Corey, along with two friends, organized to hit the town, but there was a slight mix-up when they turned up to the town without him. It transpired that each friend was under the impression that Corey was making the 10-mile trip with the other, but in reality, Corey had been left behind at the RAF Huntington base. That didn't stop Corey though. He jumped into his BMW and drove down to Bury St. Edmunds and caught up with his friends at So Bar. They spent the next few hours drinking and socializing at the local Wetherspoons. After leaving the Wetherspoons, they moved on to the Flex nightclub, who were less than pleased with Corey's drunken state. They begrudgingly let the group in. However, at 1 a.m., he was told to leave on account of being too drunk. The bouncer approached him in the club, and according to that bouncer, Corey held his hands up before walking back outside. He didn't cause a fuss or try to argue with the bouncer. He knew that he needed to go and get some food and head home. Corey calmly walked down the street and headed to his favorite takeaway, Pizza Mamma Mia. According to a BBC article, Corey ordered 2 burgers, a kebab, and some chips, pleasantly talking with those in the restaurant that night. He collected his order and left, looking for a quiet place to sit and eat his food. It appears that the alcohol had gotten the better of him by this point, as he was sitting in the doorway of a shop, and he fell into a snooze only to wake himself up minutes later and continue eating his food. Corey was seen leaving the takeaway at 1:30 a.m., and the last official sighting of him on CCTV occurred at 3:25 a.m. It's unknown where Corey was during these 2 hours. At 3:25, Corey can be seen on CCTV cameras walking alone in Brentgovell Street in a horseshoe-shaped area behind some shops. This area contained the industrial bins used by the businesses, and it's still unknown as to why Corey walked to that area. Perhaps he was trying to dispose of his trash, or perhaps he'd just become disoriented and confused. Corey's squad mates noticed that over the weekend, his 8-month-old puppy, Lowell, had been left alone in his room, something that was out of character for Corey as he adored his puppy. However, Corey had booked the weekend off and everyone assumed that he would return in time for work on Monday. But Monday, September 26th, 2016 came around, and Corey failed to turn up for work, which set off alarm bells for those at RAF Huntington. Superiors at the base contacted Corey's family, and after a brief discussion, everyone's worst fears were realized. Corey Mckeague was missing and hadn't been seen since the early hours of September 4th, 2016. The Suffolk police were contacted, and a missing person investigation was launched immediately. The Suffolk police had a cause for concern for Corey's whereabouts, as there had been an attempted abduction of a serviceman from RAF Marham in Norfolk, which is a mere 35 miles away from RAF Huntington. The police feared that Corey may have also been targeted because he was a member of the RAF, and as a result, all active servicemen and women were placed on high alert. After retracing Corey's steps and speaking to those who were with him that night, the police examined the CCTV footage and found that Corey entered the horseshoe at 3:25 a.m., but was not captured by CCTV cameras leaving the horseshoe, something that is impossible given the number of cameras that are positioned around the area. The next clue came from Corey's phone that had pinged in Bury St. Edmunds Town Center in the early morning hours of September 24th, 2016. At 8 a.m., Corey's phone had unexpectedly pinged 12 miles away in Barton Mills, which struck the police as odd. They quickly put 2 and 2 together and realized that Corey's phone signal followed the path that the garbage truck had taken that morning. The garbage truck had arrived at the horseshoe, collected the waste, and then driven to the landfill in Barton Mills. At this point, most of the evidence pointed towards Corey being inside one of the bins when it was emptied and taken to the landfill. However, the reports from the bins collected that day told another story. Upon the initial examination of the paperwork, the police found that the trash collected from the horseshoe only weighed between 11 kilograms and 15 kilograms, which was way too light. Corey's mother told investigators that he weighed around 90 kilograms at the time of his disappearance. It wasn't until early 2017 that the police realized there had been a huge mistake. The load of trash hadn't been 11 kilograms as previously thought. Instead, it was 100 kilograms, meaning that Corey might have been inside. Due to this initial error, the landfill had not been searched in the days following Corey's disappearance, and precious time had been wasted in the search for him. It wasn't until the turn of 2017 that the error was noticed, and the full gravity of the situation was realized. A trash collection employee was arrested in connection with the data error, under the suspicion of perverting the course of justice. However, an investigation deemed that the data error was accidental, and the employee had nothing to do with Corey's disappearance. The British press quickly grabbed a hold of Corey's story, and within days, his face was splashed across the front pages of every major news publication in the UK. RAF Huntington, along with volunteers, searched the surrounding areas tirelessly for Corey, setting out on foot with long sticks to disturb the long overgrown woodlands around them. Corey's mother, Nicola, also drove from Scotland to join in with the search, and in the coming months, her photograph was shared thousands of times across social media. In early 2017, Corey's girlfriend of 5 months, April Oliver, announced that she was pregnant with the couple's baby and pleaded with Corey to come home. In June of 2017, she gave birth to their daughter, Ellie Louise. The searches continued, and after realizing the data error, the landfill in Barton Mills was searched. However, after 4 months, the search was called off. The search being called off deeply angered and upset Corey's family, and they were told that they had exhausted the area where Corey's body was most likely to be, but there was no evidence to support any theory that Corey was in the bin. In total, the search cost $1.2 million, and the Suffolk police assured Corey's family that the cost had nothing to do with their decision to call off the search. In November of 2020, an inquest was opened at the family's request. This request confirmed what had already been suspected, with police suggesting that Corey had most likely been inside the trash bin when it was collected and dumped at the local landfill. In August of 2021, a full inquest was ordered into Corey's disappearance, and this inquest is due to take place between March 7th and April 1st of 2022. Corey's family hope that this inquest will provide them with much-needed answers, and have called the last 5 years of their life a living nightmare. If you have any information, you're urged to contact the Suffolk Police at 01473 613 513. Alternatively, you can contact Crime Stoppers UK and make reports anonymously at 0800 555 111. Lord Lucan. Richard John Bingham, the 7th Earl of Lucan, was simply known to the British press as Lord Lucan. He was a well-known figure in society, and people knew him for his lavish lifestyle, love of gambling, fast cars, and boats. It had even been rumored that Lord Lucan was Ian Fleming's sole inspiration for the character of James Bond, a well-mannered man who enjoyed the finer things in life and wasn't afraid of jumping in when his help was needed. But Lord Lucan made a name for himself in a very different way when he mysteriously disappeared in November of 1974. And it wasn't just his disappearance that made headlines. It turned out that Lord Lucan had fled immediately after the nanny of his children and his estranged wife, Lady Lucan, had been viciously attacked. The nanny, Sandra Rivet, died as a result of her injuries, and Lord Lucan became the prime suspect in her murder. However, when police went to question him, he was gone. How did Lord Lucan's life spiral out of control so quickly? And is he really guilty of the murder and attack on his nanny and wife? Lord Lucan lived a life of luxury. He attended a prestigious private school that has produced several British prime ministers and MPs, and decided that after working in a bank, working just wasn't for him, and became a full-time professional gambler. The problem was that Lord Lucan preferred high-stakes gambling, but always ended up losing more than he won. He quickly racked up large gambling debts that he couldn't pay off, putting him under stress and in danger. In 1963, Lord Lucan married Veronica Duncan, and she became Lady Lucan, a title that was heavily sought after by many women who had fallen under Lord Lucan's charming spell. The couple were caught up in a whirlwind romance, and quickly after their marriage, they welcomed their first child, Francis, into the world. Francis would be followed by George and Camilla, and the family lived happily at 46 Lower Belgrave Street in London. Lord Lucan's father had passed away 2 months after the wedding, and left Lord Lucan with an inheritance of $250,000, which, when adjusted for inflation, is around $5.3 million. As previously mentioned, Lord Lucan loved to gamble, and he quickly lost the money that he had inherited from his father, which put a huge strain on his marriage. 9 years after the pair had gotten married, they filed for divorce, which was volatile to say the least. Around the time of their divorce, Lady Lucan had been suffering from postnatal depression and had been consulted by psychiatrists who prescribed her medication and therapy. Lord Lucan stated that his wife's ailing mental state also put a strain on their relationship. Once the two had separated and were living apart, a bitter custody battle began, with each side wanting full custody of the children. Lord Lucan portrayed his now estranged wife as a madwoman who wasn't fit to care for their children. In a bid to prove this, Lord Lucan began spying on Lady Lucan and became obsessive about her every move. He would sit and wait outside of the home they once shared, hoping to catch a snippet of inappropriate behavior. He also began recording all of their phone conversations and stalking her outside of the home. Lady Lucan expressed her concern to one of her nannies, who was becoming increasingly worried about Lord Lucan's stalking. She turned to her nanny one day and said, quote, "I wouldn't be surprised if he kills me one day." A string of nannies rotated through the Lucan household. However, it was Sandra Rivet who happened to be in the Lucan home on Lower Belgrave Street on the evening of November 7th, 1974. In the weeks leading up to November 7th, Lord Lucan had lost the bitter custody battle that had dragged in friends and relatives from both sides. He had even joked to friends about killing his estranged wife, but nobody thought that he would go through with it. His behavior became more and more self-destructive. He began drinking and smoking heavily, and the anger of losing his children to his estranged wife played heavily on him. Finally, on November 7th, 1974, that pent-up anger erupted and ended with one person gone and another injured. According to Lady Lucan, at around 8:55 p.m., she heard a commotion coming from the basement and ran downstairs to see what was happening. She knew that Sandra was in the basement and ran to make sure that everything was okay. Upon reaching the top of the stairs, she was met with silence before being ambushed by an intruder. She's stunned when her attacker screams "shut up," and she realized that it was the voice of her estranged husband, Lord Lucan. Lady Lucan was able to fight off the intruder and ran into the basement, where she found Sandra's body concealed in a mailbag. Sandra had been hit over the head with a lead pipe and had succumbed to her injuries. Lady Lucan immediately called 999, and within minutes, the Metropolitan Police were at the scene of what would become the crime of the century. With the events of previous years in mind, the police wanted to speak to Lord Lucan to rule him out as a suspect. However, he was nowhere to be found. On the evening of the attack, Lord Lucan had gone to a friend's house and borrowed their Ford Corsair. This Corsair was found 75 miles away in New Haven, covered in bloodstains. Lord Lucan immediately became the key suspect, and the British media were whipped into a frenzy over this announcement. People all across the south of England turned up to help the police find Lord Lucan and bring him to justice for what he had done. The friend who had lent Lord Lucan the car said that they didn't phone the police as they didn't know Lucan was a wanted man. It wasn't until weeks after the attack that Lady Lucan spoke to the police and confirmed that her estranged husband, Lord Lucan, was the one that she had fought off that night. She told them that he was the one responsible for killing Sandra, and that he had likely run away to avoid the punishment for his crimes. Despite a nationwide manhunt, no sign of Lord Lucan was ever found, and to this day, he remains one of Britain's top fugitives. An inquest was held in absence, and Lord Lucan was found guilty of the murder of Sandra Rivet in 1975. The pressure was mounting on the Metropolitan Police, and appeals were held for either Lord Lucan to come forward and hand himself in, or for anyone with information to contact them. This was when Lord Lucan began being spotted around the world, from South Africa to Barbados to India. In early 1975, witnesses reported seeing Lord Lucan in Melbourne, Australia, but were unable to get close enough to speak to him. In mid-1975, he was spotted once more in 2 different towns in France. South African police made a startling revelation when they announced that they had recovered Lord Lucan's fingerprints from a glass in a bar. Another theory states that Lord Lucan is possibly living in India under the pseudonym Jungly Berry, or that he has undergone plastic surgery to drastically change his appearance and live in plain sight. Neil Berryman, the son of Sandra Rivet, has his own theories that he has put forward to the Metropolitan Police and British news outlets. In an article for inews.co.uk, Neil told reporters that he believes he has tracked down Lord Lucan to Perth, Australia. Neil suspects an elderly Buddhist man who lives in a retirement home and has a mysterious and unaccountable past. According to the article, Berryman also cites a facial recognition test which showed a similarity of 85% between the man and Lord Lucan. He has taken his case to Scotland Yard Cold Case Unit and is confident that they'll continue the investigation. The rumor mill continues to swirl. However, as of 2021, there's no new evidence that has come to light in regards to Lord Lucan's whereabouts. And in 2016, he was declared deceased in absence at the request of his son. Although Neil Berryman still holds on to hope that Lord Lucan is alive and well somewhere. Before her passing in 2017, Lady Lucan told the press that she believed that her estranged husband had taken his own life shortly after fleeing the crime scene in 1974. Neil Berryman told the BBC in a heart-wrenching interview, quote, "We have the truth and justice for Sandra. A horrible death, a young woman beaten, my mother." If still alive today, Lord Lucan would be 87 years old. If you have any information, you're asked to contact the Metropolitan Police on 101 for UK residents and 4420-7230-1212 for those who are calling internationally. Alternatively, if you wish to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers UK at 0800 555 111. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knots, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.